part of the reason why we're at where we're at right now is because I didn't want to. I chose not to be realistic. If I chose being realistic, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. I'd be like, being a public servant here in Ottawa and collecting a pension. But I want to prove that like you could still live your dream. Like you could be a 40-year-old person and still live your dream. Like it's not too late to live your dream.
Hello and welcome to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. We're here to help you navigate life while disrupting the status quo. Our discussions cover a number of topics relevant to everyday life. We discuss everything from relationships to entrepreneurship. We also engage in some difficult but important conversations. And now, here are your hosts, Brian and Tanya Hamilton.
Thank you for joining us for episode 3 of the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. Today, we're discussing entrepreneurship, following your passion, and relationships, and joined by Kevin and Koliah Bourne. Kevin and Koliah, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
So the first thing we want to find out is, who are Kevin and Koliah Bourne?
Okay, well, Kevin and Koliah Bourne are married. That's an interesting question to ask because I think we're also in a place right now of, I would honestly say, kind of redefining ourselves. But
we literally had a conversation right before, earlier this morning about this identity and how much we've both changed and are changing. So I think
that's what makes it a bit hard to answer. But I mean, in a generic way, we are a married couple who like KBs like crazy because our kids are all initialed KB as well. But we're married. We've been partners. We've known each other forever. We have children, businesses. I'm in school. We're a busy couple.
You are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we're entrepreneurs. We're longtime friends. We're parents, all that kind of stuff. I think life partners is kind of like I think we're literally life partners.
Yeah. Well, we're not now.
We have been life partners even before married. So yeah, entrepreneurs, life partners, all that kind of stuff.
Perfect. So yeah, you actually just took me into my second question here about your unique backstory, right? Like you said, you guys literally are life partners. When did you guys meet?
I mean, I don't know literally when. It's funny because people would ask like, what, how did you guys meet? I'm like, we don't know. It was so early. I mean, our parents are friends. Like our fathers were kind of acquaintances from back in Barbados from the time they were kids. And then they both ended up in Toronto at the same church. We just kind of grew up in the same church. Like our parents were kind of friends even before Koliah was born. Maybe like a year before Koliah was born, like our parents kind of got to know each other. So, I mean, I was at her first birthday party, all that kind of stuff. And we just always grew up around each other, in each other's space. We're always pretty close. Like there's a lot of us that grew up in the same church, like kids and stuff, but me and Koliah played together a lot. Like even if we had like house parties and stuff with like all the family friends, like usually Koliah and I would be playing board games like Guess Who and stuff like that together and whatnot. So we always kind of just grew up close. She kind of felt like a sibling more than anything.
Yeah. Like we felt like siblings,
we did piano lessons together. Like me, my sister, and Koliah did piano when we were kids together, like after church. So my dad would drive the three of us to piano after church on Sundays. And we're all Ks. Like my sister's Karen and she's Koliah and I'm Kevin. So we were kind of like, the 3 Ks, So we kind of literally grew up like it felt like she was a sister more than anything else.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that because I am an only child. So having them was like having any close friend was like having siblings. So always having, people to just play with was the big thing. And I think one of the big things is our families often did holidays together as well. Yeah. So we would do like Easter and Christmas together at alternating apartments at first. And then when they moved, so we've always sort of been around each other, always been together. And as much as childhood, I think, was just always playing, I think when we got into our teens, that's probably when we actually we're more like friends, even though we were always friends. I think the change in how we
became coworkers.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, we worked together like in late teens, early 20s.
Yeah.
We worked at a senior home.
that was connected to our old church. And so we were coworkers for a while. And so that's when we really became just close, like literally like best friends. You know, our dads would be at choir practice. So Thursdays after work, we would just go to the mall every Thursday. And yeah, we just literally became like, I don't know, we were like literally like at one point I told her she was gonna be my best man when they got married. I was like, you're gonna be my best man. And
she planning those days,
you know, like that kind of stuff. So there was no thought whatsoever of any kind of romantic connection. But then there came a time when there was a period of time where girls kept telling me like why are you with me? You know, you're marrying Koliah. Like girls would tell me that. And I was like, I didn't want to hear it. So I'm like, yo, she's like my little sister. Like it's not happening. But then I started having dreams about her being my wife, you know, and weird stuff like that would happen. Or remember the other day, like there was one night where we were just friends where we had the same dream in the same night.
Wow.
It was so weird. Like she came to work one day and she was talking about, oh yeah, last night I had this dream where I was at Yorkdale and I was with Tiffany and and you called me and you were at my place. And in my dream that night, I was at her place waiting for her and she was at Yorkdale with Tiffany. And I was like, so we had the same dream, but she had it from her perspective and I had it from my perspective. And I was like, what that? Like, it was weird, just as friends, you know? So like stuff like that, where you're just like, okay, you know, there was just these indications over time. Like it felt like I wasn't fully Christian at that time, but I knew, I was like, okay, God's trying to like tell me something. And so eventually things happened and
yeah.
So was that kind of the transitional point from Koliah being your best man to your bride?
I guess, yeah. I mean, it was a long process. I think part of it too is like, you know, we became Christians after that, and so you know, my values changed. I guess, you know, as a young man, you kind of want like you know, like there's certain things that you want that's different. I think, you know, becoming Christian, like my values changed. What I wanted out of life changed. You know, what I wanted out of a partner changed. And you know, and then she also, you know, developed, like she, you know, went from just looking at like my little sister to like, you know, there were some days where I looked at her, I was like, oh, she actually looks, you know, she looks good. You know, it's like, oh, she looks nice in those pants. You know, so like, yeah. Or like she started getting her hair done and going there, you know, she'd go to the hairdresser a lot. And so just kind of noticing certain things like, oh, she actually looks good. And then noticing like her interactions with my mom, like her and my mom were really close. So her mom used to Koliah would sleep over at our place a lot and not sleep over at her place, and our moms would like babysit us. So, you know, my mom and her mom were like really close, right? Like she used to call her mom already, you know, even just as friends, right? So I always see stuff like that as like, okay, like I always knew like no matter who I dated, they would never end up being closer to my mom than Koliah is, you know?
And I will say, I think after a while that probably got a little bit awkward because it was always, he would be with somebody and I knew I would have to be a part of this relationship because somehow they'd have to accept that I was the friend.
Yeah.
Right.
And I used to go to you for relationship advice anyway. If I was doing something dumb, like I'd go to you. And we would even like, we got so used to like just sleeping in the same bed as kids that even in our early 20s, we were still sleeping.
We were still sleeping in the same bed.
And even like I'd be in a relationship and they're like, don't you see something wrong with you sleeping in the same bed as me? I'm like, she's like my sister. Like, yeah, we're 20, but it's like we've been sleeping in the same bed since we were kids. Like you know, so
it was normal.
It was normal.
And we normalized a lot of things, I think, in all reality, where people thought, y'all are strange. We were like, no, not really. Like that's just how it was. And we talked about people being like siblings. There was like, is that not what you do with your sibling, or is that not what you do with a really good friend? So there was no, and it was completely platonic. So it was like, it's just sleep, y'all. Like it's really not a big deal.
But during those times too, like what was good about those times is being friends is that we learned to like work together a lot. Like we always worked, like I think we worked together probably like 10 or 11 times
before we even got married.
Between like running ministry at church together, like working at the seniors home together, like we had worked together, like we were just amazing working together.
Yeah.
Like if we were working the dining room at work,
like we would treat our two sections as one section, and we'd be like, okay, you get the juices and I'll get the desserts, and and we would just run our sections like together, you know. So we were always partners in when it comes to like working together and stuff. So
I love that. And now look at you guys.
Yeah.
Teammates.
all foundation for now. If we're I guess paying attention to all of that. So yeah,
that's neat. So another question I have in regards to your marriage, compromise. Some people maybe don't like to use that word because maybe they feel that somebody has to almost bow down to what it is they want at the time to let the other sort of rise up. But compromise is a major factor in a marriage. So can you share how you both go about dealing with compromise?
Well, I definitely think there's seasons in life. Like when we first moved to Ottawa, like my dream was to work on Parliament Hill. And, a few months in, Koliah got a job on Parliament Hill, spoke no French. She was pregnant and still got a job on Parliament Hill. And I'm here, political science guy, policy background.
It's French.
I couldn't find a job. So that was the moment.
It's like, okay, I got to be the support. I got to be like, Koliah's out working right now. And there was a lot of that. Even just, I was a stay-at-home dad with all three of our kids at some point. Like I was home for like a year and a half with our first son. I was home for 3 years with our second son. And then I was home for like a semester or two with our daughter. And that was me having to be like, okay, you're like, she was shining. Like she was like, she had her job on the hill while I was off the hill. And I was like, okay, well, I got to be the support, and then there's other times where like she had a good job with the Canadian Media Producers Association. And so I was like, okay, I got to be the support. So I think, over time, we've learned how to like we each have seasons. Like there's been seasons where she needed to be out there. So I had to kind of play the support and just be the stay-at-home father. And I had to be the one that was like waking up in the middle of the night and tending to kids and grocery shopping and planning, snacks and lunches and all that kind of stuff. There came times where she had to be more so that. And so it's just kind of like recognizing seasons. Like now it's a little bit more tough just because like we're both busy. Like she's busy with school and I'm busy with business. So it's kind of a little bit more like, yeah, like you have to, you literally have to just choose to compromise. Like there's times like I don't necessarily want to do certain things, but it's like you just kind of have to. And it's mutual respect, right? It's just saying, I respect either if you're in a season right now where like you're really like need to be at the forefront, like I respect that. Or if it's something where it's like, I respect the fact that, I think in this time, obviously things are really going well for me. So I think, Koliah's probably had to compromise a lot in this particular time, just because it seems like, okay, I'm in demand. But it's like we've kind of had those back and forths over the past 12, 13 years where we've each had to kind of compromise.
Yeah, and I think it is also part of our unique story too, because I think, especially for a lot of women, the case is usually, okay, so the woman is at home doing all the stuff while the man is out working. And from very early, that wasn't necessarily the case. And I think at first, I couldn't really understand why that was happening, because I was always the one that was working a job, where Kevin's always been entrepreneurial. So from the time we got married, he was always trying to grind, trying to hustle, trying to do what he needed to do while I was the one doing a job. And I think, I knew getting into this what that meant, sort of, just knowing that, okay, well, this is what, I have to do and that's what he has to do. And I remember there was a time just even before getting married that I had said to him that, because we were actually doing World Financial Group. So we were both trying to get our insurance license at that time. And I remember saying at one point to him, I just want to be the support. Like, I just want to be, I'll sit back and, help you kind of build. So I think, knowing that from the beginning kind of, just really helped my mindset anyway. But then just the way life sort of turned out, like we never planned any of this. Like the fact that we, the way we moved to Ottawa, what happened in Ottawa, none of that was ever the plan, but that's just how it worked out. And I would say we also did have that discussion about submission and what that meant to us and whether we actually wanted to follow along with that whole idea of, okay, well, he's this and you're this. And it's like, well, we're going to kind of have to be together on this, as opposed to you're this and I'm this, knowing that both of us are submitted to each other. So yeah, so compromise it's definitely a daily thing. It's not always an easy thing, because some days I literally hate it. being honest. But I've also owned that this is what we've got to do, and that's just how it has to get done, you know.
The things that she's doing and I'm doing, they're both serving the same goal.
Yeah.
Like her even being in school to become an accountant it serves what we're doing when it comes to what we want to do with the entertainment industry and everything. So it's like we're literally both, you know, like I've been on calls with other couples where like their callings don't mesh at all, right? So it's like I'm not interested in what this person's doing, like you know, like so for us, like our callings are very like intertwined, and so it makes compromise a lot easier because I know that what she's doing is feeding feeding what we want to do, and what I'm doing is it's all feeding the same thing. So it makes it easier to say, you know what, I'm going to compromise because I literally need you to get that accounting degree for what it is that we're wanting to do. So I don't mind doing that because I need that. Like that's an essential part of the vision of what we're trying to do. So,
and I think sometimes too, maybe it's not for couples something so enmeshed, but maybe it's a goal of, hey, we want to pay off our debt, or you know, we want to buy a house, right? So yeah, you may not really like or support what your spouse is doing, but when it comes down to it, being humble enough to say, okay, I'm going to stay home so we can save X amount of money on daycare a month, right? And knowing that either way, the end result is what you both have in mind.
Yeah, and I think that's it on the head. It's the commitment that you have to each other at the end of the day is long term. Like you didn't get into marriage for this short term. You know, no one gets into it like, I'm going to do this for 3 years and that's about it. And it's over. Like, no, you get into it for the long term. So if it's going to be that long term commitment, then you're going to have that long term compromise for whatever goal you have.
All right. The next thing I'm kind of curious about is you touched on the whole move to Ottawa. What was that all about? How did that come to fruition?
That was kind of it was a very spiritual thing. Like, I mean, I never had intentions of moving to Ottawa ever. I don't think anyone who comes up in Toronto ever thinks about moving anywhere, because I think Toronto, like, it literally has everything. So it's like, you don't ever think, oh, I'm going to move to like some other place. Like Toronto is the center of the universe. If you are from there, like that's just, you know. So for me, it's like, it literally was like, I think after a while, I felt like I wanted to move to a French speaking place. So originally I was always like, I'm going to move to Montreal one day. And that was what I was saying. And then one day I was praying and I just felt like you know, like that God, like type of unction of like, nah, you're moving to Ottawa one day. And I was just like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like Ottawa, you know? But that's kind of how it started. It was really felt like this calling. And then I had a few more kind of experiences after that kind of just really confirmed that that's where I was called to be. And so, yeah, that was even before we were married. Like I had this sense of calling that, okay, you know, God's called me to go to Ottawa. And so then when we got married, it was kind of like, okay, we're both going. And that was kind of it. And you know, at the time, you know, the church we were at, they were planting the Ottawa church. And so we were kind of involved in that. So I kind of got a chance to see a little bit of the city, and it was nice. Yeah, it was nice. Helping with the church planting on weekends and stuff. And so we got a chance to see the city. And my sister also used to do work out here, and she used to tell me like, man, like I can really see you in Ottawa. Like it's French, it's political, it's, you know, government. Like she's like, I can see you there. And I was like, I didn't care. Because at that point I was just like, you know, but so it really became like an overtime, like kind of thing. And that was like, I think the first time I really felt this calling to Ottawa was like 2 years before we actually moved. So for those 2 years, I was just like Ottawa obsessed. I was like, okay, I was researching like who's who. I'm going to like, who do I want to meet when I'm there? Like all my passwords on my emails were Ottawa something. Like I bought an Ottawa calendar, like had on my wall to kind of remind me that this is so I literally became like tunnel vision for 2 years of like, I'm going to this place, you know, and so I was just planning for it and like researching it and all that kind of stuff. Like, so that's kind of how it happened. It really was like a calling for us.
Now, what was the goal when you actually first came to Ottawa? Because obviously we're going to get into the shifter agency, but was that kind of all in the plans, or was that something that came to fruition as well?
No, we always say that, you know, it's kind of like our, you know, on our vision board, we had, we had a vision board that we made a while back, and on the vision board we have like our two kids. We had two kids, KJ and Kia, which we ended up having, but our middle son wasn't on there. And even when you look at the vision board, like a lot of, it's like almost like I feel like our son and like the industry stuff that we're doing now is like almost like parallel. Like we didn't plan for him, and we didn't plan for this entertainment industry stuff. It was just like both our middle son and the stuff we're doing now is almost like it was a gift that we never planned for. So yeah, it was never like the goal was so the goal was really just political at first. It was like, okay, I'm gonna work on the Hill, and that was pretty much it. It was just political, and everyone, like, even before moving, I talked a lot about my political aspirations and stuff. So even a lot of people that know me from church knew me as, okay, Kevin's going to Ottawa and he's going to run for politics, and he's going to. So that's why a lot of people now are confused by what I'm doing, because they're like, I thought you went there for political stuff. They're still freaking out. They're like, you're supposed to be there. Like, people still trying to remind me, like, you're supposed to be in politics, and I'm like, yeah, I know, But yes, a lot of people are confused, because that's everything I was talking about, was just one day running for politics and being on the Hill and everything like that, and then it just. Yeah, this whole thing was just like, something we totally didn't account for. So yeah, so that was the goal, was just really to be in politics, and that was pretty much it.
And just to add to that, I think one of those keys was like the fact that I did get the job on Parliament Hill and he didn't, was kind of telling, because he had to figure out what else to do. And at that time he had picked up a camera, and he was taking pictures like all over the place. And then he started a blog, and then like it was very, you had to have a different focus. So you had to pick up something. And, he was starting to lean towards media.
Okay, well, oh, look at this, a play on words here. Let's shift into talking about the Shifter Agency. So explain about that, Kevin.
Okay, so Shifter started as just the media outlet. And part of the reason why I started, and it's funny because in Toronto, I never did anything creative. I was very just like corporate, the church we went to was corporate. So I was very corporate. And yeah, so going to Ottawa, it's like all of a sudden I became a creative guy. And part of it was because I saw there was an opportunity for media. Like coming from Toronto, it's obviously there's a lot of big media. And when I went to Ottawa, I was just like, this is the nation's capital, and all the media was local. And there was nothing that really I felt was really like reflected what the capital city of Canada should have. And so that's kind of what really sparked this thought about media. Like I would go to people like, I'd complain to people about the media, like, Ottawa Ottawa needs a bigger media voice. And then people would look at me like, who cares? Yeah. Like, what do you And so that's when so after a while I realized, okay, I got to do something about this. Right. So that's when I bought, we bought like one Christmas, instead of buying, I think, each other gifts, we literally just put our money towards buying a camera so that I could start taking pictures and shooting video. I learned just from scratch how to shoot. I think Koliah once, for one of my birthdays, paid for me to do like a full day photography class just to learn how to use a camera. And then I started doing like camera operating for Rogers TV for like sport in their sports division. Started learning camera. Then I became the media director at a church. So I just kind of like acquired all these skills. Yeah, at some point in there, like we decided to start Shifter. And it was like, I had lunch one morning with a fashion designer, a Christian guy, and he was just like, man, you started an online magazine. You should have these kinds of sections and whatever. And usually when people share ideas like that with me, I'm always like, I don't really listen. But something resonated with me. I was like, okay, this felt like a God thing. And then so 6 months later, she was volunteering at church, and the community pastor was like, I have an idea I want to share with Kevin about a magazine I wanted to start. So after I was like, okay, because I was already thinking along those lines. And so, yeah, we met and we just decided on the spot, okay, we're going to start this thing. And we were really inspired by Oprah and just her ability to platform talent. We're like, all the people that came out of Oprah, like Suze Orman and Dr. Oz and Dr. Phil, were like, man, we need to create something that profiles talent, that platforms talent. And there's so many talented people around us that just weren't being recognized. And so we're like, man, we need to create something that could platform these people. And so when we first started, it was a faith and culture magazine at first. So we talked a lot about Christian stuff and still pop culture, but Christian as well, almost like relevant magazine type of thing. And then eventually we felt kind of the leading to take it fully non-Christian, secular, which was long and hard process. And then, yeah, so from there, once we really started, like we really just started serving the city of Ottawa with Shifter. We started getting on TV, CTV, CBC, and all that kind of stuff, talking about culture in the city, talking about pop culture. And so after doing that, I realized oh, I'm a PR person. Like I'm getting my team exposure, and we were starting to get recognized in the city and stuff. And I was like, man, like if I'm doing this for these guys, it's at that point, just from getting my own team on all these different media outlets, I had all these media contacts, and I was like, why aren't I offered this as a service? Like I'm plugged into every media outlet. I should be like offering this. And so that's kind of where the idea of just a little bit of the agency came along, because I was like, I was just naturally providing services to my team that I realized I can monetize this by offering it to the general public. And also because I was a communications strategist on Parliament Hill, eventually when I did get on the Hill, I was always in communications, and I was like, man, I was a communications guy. Like, why aren't I offering this? And so it was really just, doing the agency was just like packaging all the stuff we had done over the years and creating an entity that we can kind of like monetize those skills through. Like, again, I was the media director at our church. I was creating like all the social media content, videos, like photo, social media. So I had all this whole skill set of like multimedia, and even on the Hill, I was managing the whole communications for a senator's office. And so I was like, this is work that I could be, or these are services that I could be offering and making money off of. So that's kind of where the agency came from.
The way that this started, it sounds like everything just kind of, you hit the ground running and everything just kind of went exactly how you wanted it to go. Kind of.
It's like, I think it's kind of like, I don't think I really knew where I wanted to go. It's just baby steps. It's like you do one thing. Like even when we started the media outlet, it wasn't like, it was just, we saw an opportunity. It wasn't something that we didn't pray about it. Like we just did it. It was a passion. It was a desire. We did it. And as we did it, things started to unfold. And the more steps we kept taking, like things started to unfold. And then eventually, like we just started running. And then it just kind of, it was a snowball effect. To a certain extent, yeah, it's almost like things just kind of happen as we plan, in a sense. And I think that's the aspect of like when you're partnering with God on something, as compared to when you're just kind of like our faith is very much a part of what we do. Like God is very much a part of what we do. So yeah, does it look like everything that we envisioned to happen has happened? Like, yeah, like one of the guys who was on our team is someone that we met at church here. And we always talk about it all the time. We're always saying, man, like everything that we said we wanted to do, we've either done already or we are doing. And I think, again, that comes back to the fact that we are partnering with God on what we do. So it's made what we do, I think, a lot more success. Like we're not kind of just like pulling at straws here and whatever. It's like, I do feel like when it comes as a family and as business people, like we have a very strong sense of direction in our home. Like we're not people that lack vision or lack a sense of direction. Like I do see things a few years ahead. Like I do envision where I want us to be and where things are going to go. And yes, things have followed that. So yeah, I think just having our faith in God integrated in what we do has made our chances of success and the things we wanted to do, like it's made it a lot easier.
I would say that, has it been perfect? No. There's been a lot of, it's taken a long time to get to this point, and we've had a lot of pruning, I would say, because, there's an element in there that we got into management, and we were managing artists at one point. And that was something that was sort of being done before. Like I was always, for me, admin was always the thing. So was I always helping people? Absolutely. So, when it came to artists, it was like, okay, well, we could try this too. And we had some success there, but we didn't have, a lot of success there. And it's not that it's necessarily off the table altogether. It just, at the time, it's, we've had our hand in there, but it's like, okay, we also need to focus on what we're doing right now. And if you prune a thing, so you're like, okay, well, this isn't working for right now, so we'll put it off and keep going with what's working, so, but it's definitely going in a dark, we
definitely had years of struggle. Like we had hard years, like we had hard years, man. Like even when we were pregnant with our first child, like we literally we got to the point where we had no food. no room on our credit card, nothing in savings, like zero, like nothing to tap into whatsoever.
Yep.
And there was years of us literally having to walk in faith after we moved to Ottawa, because it's like we literally had nothing, or we had to leave our place by the end of the week and not know where we're moving to next. Like we had like these crazy like our families still don't know all the stuff we went through. Like this time we were eating from the food bank, car got repossessed, like we went through some stuff. Like so we had to we learned. But even in that, though, we learned because everything always worked out. So it's like we learned how to weather storms. Like we learned how to weather rock bottom. Once you hit rock bottoms, you no longer fear rock bottom, because you're I've been there, I've been there, and I survived, right? So even in these times, all those times helped us. Even during COVID, even during all the stuff, because we had gone through so much hard times and learned how to survive. When COVID came, it's we're good. Yeah. we've been at the worst. We've been at the worst. So it's
with kids.
It's
one thing when you're just married and you're two doing it, when you got kids and you're
so what's happening here?
Yeah. Those years, now we're in a groove. Now we're in this, now we're in a time where it's man, it's successful, But even with Shifter, it's for the first 5-6 years of Shifter, we weren't even making money. And that was kind of our fault. I purposely said with Shifter, I was I told people that we work with, I'm let's not focus on making money right away. Let's just focus on building the brand. So I was if we build the brand, then we could just monetize the brand, right? Apple, Apple, they built their brand to the point where it's as soon as they introduce a new product, it's people want it because it's Apple, right? So I was let's build Shifter to the point where people love the brand. And then, so for the first how many years, we weren't even focused on making money. We're let's just dominate the city. Let's just make put Shifter everywhere, TV, radio. You're Shifter, everywhere. And so that was the goal. And so eventually we had to say, okay, we need to make money now. And that was a transition because, we were I'm a creative guy. I was never great at making money, right? And I'm also a nice guy too. I'm very nice. So it's hard as a nice guy, who's a creative guy, to actually make that transition to actually making money and be able to tell people no, or be able to tell people, that kind of stuff, and actually hold to certain standards. And so even learning how to become a business person was a challenge. And even just and I also realized that the mentality of church also there's a lot of mentalities that you learn in church that don't translate well to business. In the sense of when you come in church, you learn to give and serve, and one day God will bless me, whatever. Whereas in business, it's no, if I put in a certain level of work, I need to invoice you, and you need to pay your invoice. And if you're not paying your invoice, I need to call you and say, yo, those kind of things. In that instance, you can't be nice. You need to be able to say, yo, you owe me money, But so at the beginning, that was hard. It was man, I'm too nice to ask somebody to whatever, or it's too nice to say, hey, you sign this paperwork or whatever. So that transition of learning how to profit and not feeling guilty for profiting, not feeling guilty for charging people for service that is worth its value. Those mindsets, it's only past the year and a half, we got a business coach, it's business/money coach, and she helped us to make that transition to become these people. That's why now you're seeing, we made 10,000 here, making 15,000 there. All of that is because we had to get a coach to completely rewire our brains to be okay with profit and to actually, be business people. So,
and know your value, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
and one. Really, and put yourself in there. And that's where knowing your value is important, because a lot of the time it was the idea was even just giving, was never giving to ourselves. We were always, let's give to everybody else. So even everybody we wanted to serve was about them. It was about making sure that they were okay. And it was all that, but we weren't prioritizing ourselves.
Yeah.
And it was really and truly, the scripture we always like to throw out is love God with your whole heart, mind, and strength, and love others. What do you always forget? As yourself. You always forget that you're supposed to love in order to love others, I need to love myself. And that was something that we were doing backwards. And it was so you're even with money, it's well, let's get that person on and they get paid but then we don't get paid. So we weren't prioritizing any sort of anything here.
Because even with Shifter, like for the first while, I was getting all these people on TV and radio on my team, but I was never going on because I didn't care. So it's like my joy was like, I want to see you guys on TV. I want to see you guys on radio. That was my joy. And eventually, some people on my team were like, "Yo, like you need to start doing TV and radio stuff." And I was like, "Nah, I just want to be the business guy." But after a while, it's just like then these people would all move on to these amazing opportunities in the industry, get hired and stuff, and I'm sitting there still like we have no money. Right. So that's when I realized like all these skills that I generated of how to like get people buzzing and how to get people on TV. I was like, I need to be the first customer. I need to be the first client. I need to make sure that I'm putting myself on first and making sure that I'm taking care of our family. And then after that, I can help other people. And so that's kind of even some of the changes with like now, like some of like the change with Shifter and stuff, and people stay seeing me and wanting to interview me. That just became me saying, you know what, I'm going to stop giving my best to everybody and invest in me and actually serve myself and serve my family. And then once I'm good, now I can be of service to all these people. But for a long time, even when it comes to the city, like I have such a passion for the city where I would do things, I would slave over like doing things for the city, even if it meant I was getting, like even when we started a radio show, I had a daily radio show here in Ottawa and I wasn't getting paid for it. It was just volunteer, but I was spending like 4, sometimes 6 hours a day, like slaving over this radio show because it was a huge, like it was gonna be huge for Ottawa and huge for the artists, but I'm like, I wasn't getting paid, right? And so like then we end up suffering as a family. And so I would do things like that where I'm like, man, I'm serving the city, I'm doing things for the city, but I'm like, I'm not helping myself or I'm helping my family. So I had to switch that and say, you know what, I'm going to help myself and my family and my company first. And then out of that, I can then, help others. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of people fall into that sometimes, right? Even like whether it be at church, starting your own business, or if you're employed, you want to put so much out, but you're not getting back. And then what happens is it harms you and delays relationships in your life, right? Like you get home, you feel great because you spent all this time volunteering for your radio show, but now you have a wife that's probably quite upset because she's been home all day with the kids. And on top of that, you're not even coming home with like a paycheck, right?
Exactly.
And I think we all fall into that at some points, but you really have to have that boundary of, okay, I can give, but there has to be a line of where I stop, right?
Yeah. And I think the kind of the analogy there that you hit on was when you're on an airplane and they're doing the emergency plan and, they tell you to put the mask on yourself first before you put it on somebody else.
It doesn't make sense. Like you think that doesn't make sense, but it does. It makes complete sense. Like how, and like,
and that doesn't sound Christian according to what we
that's it.
What we have been deemed Christian. Like the Christian mentality we've been served is that no, in that instance you should put the mask on somebody else. Like what I'm saying, like that's because that it's selfish to put it on yourself first. But it's like no, like in putting on myself, we could both serve, we could both live. If I put it on you, then we can both die. So
definitely. Yeah. So I'm learning a lot of that.
And you talk about the kind of the church mentality. So I have to ask, have you had any pushback from the people that you grew up with? Is that anyone reached out to you and tell you, like, Kevin, you're backsliding, you're out of your purpose? Have you had any of that?
Well, definitely. Even here in Ottawa, like there was a point where we were getting messages from churches, people like prophesying, saying, "Oh, God told me you guys aren't supposed to be reviewing secular movies." Like stuff like that, where just like, or people like definitely people have unfollowed me, like people that have known me from like the church that we went to, people have unfollowed me on social media. People that make assumptions, and that's the thing. Like I remember, even when we were back in those days, like we used to look at the Beyoncés and be like, oh my gosh, like, and assume that like the assumption was that anybody who's out there in culture isn't saved. Anybody who's out there isn't Christian. So it's like, you don't know what Beyonce's relationship was like or not, but it's like, oh, she's doing the Sasha Fierce thing and what's all this kind of stuff. People are binding Sasha Fierce and all kind of stuff like that. And it's like, you're doing all these things, but it's like, it's only now that I'm on the other end of now I'm in the industry that I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is how I was treating people, So the assumption is that if somebody's out in culture, if you're not on social media quoting Bible verses all the time or talking about religious things and all, then it means you're not, that you must not be in relationship with God. And I say it's the opposite. It's like, to do what we do, you have to know God even more. Like your knowledge of self and knowledge of God has to be even deeper to be in places like where like we go into. Like it doesn't take much faith to be around people that believe what you believe all the time. It takes faith and knowledge of self and knowledge of God to be in spaces where people don't believe that what you believe, and you're still able to stand in your integrity and stand in your identity for who you are. So it's like I feel like I know God even more now than I did before, than I did then, and I'm even more grounded now than I was then, because my faith wasn't being tested before. But now, you know, being in certain spaces where I'm around drugs, I'm around all these different things, I'm around whatever, it's like now it's like, okay, I'm really grounded, and I really feel like my knowledge of God is even more, just because again, I'm in spaces where, yeah, I'm in those kinds of spaces, and it really, like, I love it. You know, you see Jesus, you know, he's out there with the tax collector, he's out there with all these different people, and I'm like, those are the people that you need to be in relationship with. Like, those people that need hope, you know. So
I have to say, I still struggle with that sometimes.
Yeah,
because Kevin's more involved with a lot of things than I am, so I still struggle with some of those same thoughts, because being so heavily entrenched in church, you know, being around, like I was in church 7 days a week
at the front desk,
you know, and people used to look at me and be like, you know, you're saved good. Like that was the terminology for me. I'm saved good. And because I wasn't touching this and I wasn't doing that and I wasn't blah, 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 blah. But I know that, you know, being in this industry, it's funny because I never felt fully called to this as an industry. And then getting a job around this, one, not thinking that this industry even existed in Ottawa, like that's a weird thing. Like Toronto is where it's at when you talk about entertainment and media and all of these things. And then finding a job here and getting to know the Canadian industry, like film and television specifically, was a big deal. And so then I was introduced to a lot of different people, and these people don't look, sound, talk, nothing like you know, anything that I would have known, because even on the Hill, I worked for a Christian MP. So that was also different.
And there was a whole community of like Christian people.
There was Christian people on the hill that we were all like.
We'd have our weekly meetings as Christians on the Hill. So it's like it still felt like
it was still very like, oh, this is safe, right? So getting out of that and actually being into something that was totally not Christian, and just being around people who just swore every second word was really different, because I was like, I don't know about this, guys. I don't know. But I had to sit there and I had to be in it, and I had to be like, okay, God, I'm still okay, right? Like I still had to like be like, but you're okay. Like you are okay here. You can handle this here because you are with God here. Like God is, and God is here with you. Like if he's around, then he's around. So Kevin made some comments. I don't even remember what it was, like maybe 2 years ago or so. I don't know. And somebody from that church messaged about, you remember that you're supposed to be in government and you need to watch what you say. And I was like, that's so interesting, you know, that you would say that. And from then, like, we've learned so much. Like I've learned so much about just, you know, how am I going to get out there and be around the people who are not like me? Or how do you even then get the word to people who really need it if you're not going in the places that people are supposedly not? And I think what's surprising me the most is the fact that as I venture out and look at different things and watch different things, and I feel like God is even challenging me to watch and consume different things, so that my whole mentality begins to shift. And the more I'm out here is the more I'm seeing there are people who are saved all across this industry. They just don't look, sound like the religion that I once knew, but they are fully believe. Like you listen and you're like, wow, you know more than me. Like you like what they've received is they really understand the power of grace. And that's something that I know I still struggle with understanding, is the power of grace. Like how is God overlooking all of these quote unquote issues and all these things that you're going through. You're sitting there watching somebody still smoking weed and still all of this, and God is so entrenched in their life. And every minute they're thanking God, and they know every opportunity they have is from God, like, because they're in relationship with him. And that is the most like mind-boggling thing to me sometimes, is the more people I find that I'm like, wow, you're a Christian. Oh my God, I'm so shocked. Because I would have never, because of how you grew, like how, you know, where we were, everybody out there was in sin. Like there was no safe person out in the world doing anything. We were the ones that were, oh, I'm great, I'm mighty. But all these people there's a whole grouping of people that are out here in the industry that are saved. And then for me anyway, it started to look at, I'm like, there's a place for me out here on two sides, where one, I can find community, but on the other side is I can actually also be a support to you. So because we know it's not easy out here being a Christian and around all the things that you're around, and try to stay grounded. So if I'm like you, then we can now find common ground. And that's sort of like a place that I'd like to interject myself, is like, okay, well, let me find the Christian folks and be like, well, I'm here for you. You know? Yeah. And sometimes it really still surprises me that we're like still in it, we're still going, and we haven't left it, you know, like, and that God could even call us to this. And that is one of, I think, one of the biggest surprises, that God can actually say, you know what, I want you there. And what does that mean then? That not everybody is out to be like, you know, not everybody is evil. Not like he's concerned about this industry too, and not even for the reasons that everyone thinks. Like it's not even about because everyone's in sin. No, it's because he's still desirous of all of us having some form of dominion, and like he's trying to be in this industry. Don't you think he wants people to laugh? Like laughter is still important. So if laughter is important, then comedians are important. Then comic television and what we view is still important. Like all of those things matter. Arts matter. Like they're all godly. God is a creative God. So why doesn't that matter too? You know, so yeah. Anyway.
So it's all influencing and impacting people. So why
not?
Exactly. So in closing, I do want to talk a little bit about passion, because you hear so many people, I would say the majority of people, we all have a passion, right? Now, how do you mesh your passion and work? Potentially, it may not always happen that way, but any suggestions on how people could do that?
I mean, I'm a firm believer that, I personally believe that anybody can turn their passion into something that creates income. That's just my personal thought. Like, and that's what even with Shifter, like, you know, we're in a government city, and, you know, the sense of hustle isn't here. Like, you know, in Toronto, people do their craft full time. You'll find people that do their thing full time. In Ottawa, that's not the case. You have, like, even some of the top people in the city who are top bloggers, like, you think, oh yeah, they're full-time bloggers, but meanwhile, they're like high up in the government somewhere working. Like, everybody's doing their thing as a side hustle. And so coming from Toronto, I was like, I'm not doing that. Like, I refuse. I was like rebellious. I'm like, I'm not going to do, even though I worked on the Hill for a while, like after a while, I was like, I'm not going to do what everybody else is doing. I'm not going to do like, okay, I'm running Shifter, but yeah, I'm some like public servant. I was like, I was out to prove that I could live in Ottawa and do my thing, do my passion full time. I didn't even care. I was willing to suffer for years. I was willing to, like, I just wanted to prove that it was possible to do what you do full time. And I think part of it is like, part of it is taking it that seriously. Like, you have to take it, like, people will only take you as seriously as you take yourself. So if you see your thing as a hobby, people will treat it like it's a hobby. Like, for a long time, people did treat Shifter like it was a hobby. And people would tell me, yo, your thing's just a hobby. And I'd get angry. But then in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, it was a hobby. It wasn't a business. And so the first thing about when it comes to your passion is like, you have to decide if you want it to just be a passion, and do it as a hobby. This is something that you enjoy. That's fine. Like, just do it as a hobby, because sometimes monetizing something can actually take the joy out of it. So it's okay if you just want to do something for fun, do it for fun. But if it's something where you actually like want to make a career or business out of it, you just have to decide within yourself that you're actually going to take it that seriously. and start invoicing people, start, having a sales process. Like those are all the things that you have to start to like consider if you want to actually make something a passion into a business. So it depends on you, like however seriously you take it. Like for us, people used to always tell us tell us how corporate Shifter was. Like, oh, you guys are so corporate. Even in Ottawa, people aren't used to us. Like people are used to like this very loose like community way of doing media, and then we're like, nah, like we're corporate. And people used to hate us for being corporate, but it's like now our clients are corporate, right? So it's like the level of seriousness that we took Shifter is now represented in the kind of people that we're now serving. Like, Invest Ottawa, the city's economic development corporation that like promotes the tech industry stuff. Like they're one of our biggest clients. Universal Music Canada, one of our clients. They're the biggest record label in Canada. So we've done so it's like the level of seriousness that we took what we do is now being reflected in the level of clients that we have, right? So again, if you have a passion, you just have to decide, do you actually want this to be a business, and then start behaving like a business. Even when it comes to your friends, like your friend wants services, invoice your friend. I just got invoiced. Like I had a friend invoice me for something the other day. I was so excited that my friend invoiced me, because I was just like, I was just excited, because I was like, oh my God, I'm doing friend. I wanted to show him that, I value your talent, like as a professional. Like yes, you're my friend, but I value you. I'm not going to be like, yo, you're my friend, do me this thing for free. I'm going to be like, no, like friends aside, like I value your talent. Like I don't see this as your hobby. I already see you as this like producer, content creator. So I respect your talent. So yeah, the level of seriousness that you take your passion with is the level that people are going to respond to you at. And you just have to, and even before that, you have to first believe that it's possible for your passion to actually become something. Like for me, I just turned 40, and for a long time, I always felt like I didn't feel like a 40-year-old, because I'm not established enough. I'm still because we're not told to live our dream. Like as a kid, you're told, you ask a kid what they want to be. Oh, I want to be the president. I want to be an astronaut. But then after a while, it just becomes like, oh, you gotta be realistic. And I'm like, no, like part of the reason why we're at where we're at right now is because I didn't want to. I chose not to be realistic. If I chose being realistic, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing right now. I'd be like, being a public servant here in Ottawa and collecting a pension. But I want to prove that like you could still live your dream. Like you could be a 40-year-old person and still live your dream. Like it's not too late to live your dream. So I think that's something, first of all, we need to teach people is like, it's okay to dream. It's not irresponsible. It's like we've been fed this lie that it's irresponsible to live a dream. It's irresponsible to, like I'm a 40-year-old that goes on red carpets. Like who does that? Like I've made hip hop songs. Like I've been in the studio and made rap songs. Like, and some people think, oh, like what's wrong with this guy? But I'm like, I'm living my dream. But now I've gotten to the point where it's like, to be able to, like every day I get up and I go to like the office we work out of. Like I go there every day, and I'm like, every day I'm going to the office and I'm doing what I'm working on, my own thing, like, and I'm invoicing people for like $10,000 here and then. I'm like, I love it. Like I'm getting the chance, like that, the feeling that you get of waking up every single day and like doing what you love to do and working on your own thing. Like that's priceless. So yeah, you just have to believe that it's possible, like dream. And I think as believers, it's funny how many people who we claim to be believers, but we're not really believers. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like if we're believers, like we should be dreaming. We should be having faith. We should be believing that like my scripture is all things are possible to those who believe, and that scripture has served me well. Like, like last year when we got invited to be on a media call with Kevin Hart on his press run. And I was like, I'm here at my dining table in one of the, in Vanier in Ottawa. And I'm like, I'm here literally here asking Kevin Hart questions. Like, that's not normal. Like at first it kind of seems like when I'm in it, I'm like, okay, I'm built for this. Like I'm doing it. But when you kind of take a step back, you're like, yeah, this isn't normal. But I'm like, if I didn't take that opportunity to actually take a shot at it, I wouldn't be having that experience. Like I wouldn't be experiencing that. So, I think my message in life is gonna be like dream, and once you dream, like then the work begins. Then you got to figure out, okay, what do I actually do? What do I do to make this happen? But this whole idea of like, oh, you got to grow up and be responsible. I'm sure people have said that about me, like you need to be responsible. But after a while, it was only after, like you talked before about, getting backlash from Christians and stuff like that, and from people in general who just think you need to, because a lot of people who aren't living their dream will judge people who are, right? But it's only when people like, when I got on the call with Kevin Hart, and then I think after that I ended up getting on like CBC News Network, like national TV. And then it was only then that people were like, oh, this is actually a thing.
Right.
Yeah. Like like those are, because before that people were just like, oh, what's this guy doing? But when people started seeing like the big stuff, they're like, oh, this is actually like, they're actually like, this thing's legit, type of thing. So yeah, like I think just again, if you're trying to turn what you do, like I personally don't believe you have to choose between passion and doing what you love. I believe that if you do the right things, like your passion can, and it's not that the process is going to be easy, because our process definitely wasn't easy at all. But if you do the right things, like your passion can become your career or your business. That's my thought.
I mean, I definitely agree with all of that. It's interesting. I'm one of those people that isn't very passionate about very much. Okay. And that's just my personality. I don't get excited at things very often. But I will say that my passions manifest a bit differently, because I think like Tanya, I'm a social service work background. So my passion really is people, and it is helping people, and it is finding that in every industry and arena, there are always ways to kind of work out your passion. So for me, helping people is finding a way to help people within the industry. So, I haven't given up. Like social work for me, it didn't pan out for various reasons. And I chose to go into business after the fact, but the social work aspect of my life is still there. And the passion to help people thrive and survive and function is still very much a part of me. So all of what we're doing still has, for me, long term, there's still philanthropic things that I really desire to do. And I'm trusting that the path that we're on will help me to get there. That doesn't mean that I don't stop. I'm always willing to like counsel a person who's, looking for help. And again, for me, that is where I throw in passion. So, and I'd also say that you can develop new passions, because like I said, the whole social work thing, I had applied to do more, because you obviously need more than a diploma and a degree these days. So I had applied to the degree program and didn't get in. And at that point, we had already experienced being on the system, and I hated it. Every minute of it. I hate the system 120%. And I said, this can't be it. And because I wanted to work for the government and dealing with people on the system. And I was like, nope, this isn't working. I've been here now. This is not a solution for anybody, in my opinion. Yeah. And so business for me was the route. And I'm specifically in accounting because I saw the how much like finances is a huge part of anything. So from an industry perspective, it's a huge part. Wanting to give back, it's a huge part. Wanting to invest in people, it's a huge part. So I had better know how to deal with money on all fronts. So that is partly why I am doing accounting, but that also has now fueled a new passion of just numbers and wanting to know how to manage and wanting to, like, I'm trying to be the best at this that I could possibly be so that I can serve more people and help more people in this arena, outside of this arena, but in the arena of like numbers and money. So, passions are definitely something that change. And I think that's one thing Christians don't agree with either. It's like, stay in the one lane. You're always in the one lane. Don't come out of that one lane. Like, no, God can help you change. Like he can change. It's okay. It does happen. And that's okay, because we're evolving people. I think we were created to do that as well. So for me, definitely, I would say, if you have a passion, definitely follow it. If you don't know it, don't be afraid to try a few things and try and find something and figure out what works for you, because there is so much out there that you could you could be doing and you might find a passion for, and you might, because I think, again, I never thought I'd be someone that really enjoyed being in the entertainment industry itself as much as I really enjoy like movies and TV and stuff. I never thought, oh, I could actually get into this and like do this. And that actually does excite me. Like, you know, that's like, ooh, I can't wait to get on a movie set. Like, I can't wait for that. Cause I'm like, for all the years and all the time that I'm entrenched in consuming a good story. And I am very entrenched in stories. Like, I'm that person that cries when you're watching TV and a storyline hits you. Like, I am that person. So to actually be in that industry and be a part of it is going to be amazing, you know? So, but yeah, passion for sure. Like, just follow it, find it, and don't be afraid if it doesn't look like anybody else's either.
Like that. We've hit a lot of topics. It's been great. It's been really enlightening. So we thank you guys for your time.
Before we let you go, what can we look forward to from Shifter in the future? How do we connect with you?
So our website is shiftermagazine.com. If you want the content, shifteragency.com is the agency website. And we're on all social media platforms at Shifter Magazine, at Shifter Agency. I'm personally on all social media platforms at KB the Boss _. We have our Branded to Create coaching program, because a lot of people, you know, they see us being interviewed all the time and whatever, so they kind of want to know, you know, how do I brand myself? How do I get out there like us? So we do have a coaching program called Branded to Create that, you know, whether it's for media entertainment people, professionals, and how to brand themselves. So that is always available. And then we'll be restarting our YouTube channel very soon. Probably in the next few weeks, we'll be starting our YouTube channel. And we'll have a show called Boss Talk. We'll be talking about business stuff and just life and culture and whatnot. And the last thing is we have a show. I'm hosting and producing a show for CBC Ottawa, all about Ottawa music. So that's coming in a few weeks. So that's what we have coming up.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. And again, it's always a pleasure.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Disrupt the Everyday podcast. For more ways to listen, connect with us on social media. To be a guest or to partner with us, check out our Linktree at Disrupt the Everyday. Join us next time for more ways to disrupt the everyday.